Hello to everyone and welcome to presentation 3 of the Cnap MIP training series. And this one's on completing checklists, quarterly spot checks, and preparing for annual reviews and visits. I want to talk a little bit about where to find and how to properly complete a AU sub-AU checklist, how to conduct quarterly spot checks and complete the QSC memo, and some tips for the visit and review. So you see a example screenshot of the 3-year plan. So I'm going to do a really quick recap of prior presentation. So at this point, the 3-year plan is done. The 5,200 note instructions complete, and we are ready for checklist testing. Big change from prior years is that instead of doing all of the sub-AUs 4 times per year, you're going to do only the sub-AUs and AUs that are due in that particular year, and you're only going to do it once. So you got to remember, the MIC program is not an inspection program, so we don't need to do it many times throughout the year. It can be the basis for one, a local program that you develop, but the goal is really to determine if the controls exist at all and that they're working. So we only need to test controls once in a year that is due to determine that. However, since we are doing it just once per year, the person that's completing the checklist should review a representative sample of what's occurred thus far in a year. So for example, on a 3-year plan, the government travel card program here is due to be reviewed in 2016 and 17. So let's say, for example, that there are 3 total sub-AUs under this AU. And so he's going to look at 1 in first quarter, 1 in second quarter, and 1 in third quarter. Well, if they choose to look at the government travel card in the third quarter, what the person that's doing the checklist should do is determine how many people are doing that particular process, and then take a sample from first quarter through third quarter, and be sure to include anyone that's doing that process. That way you get an example, a representative sample for control testing that can give you reasonable assurance that it's working and that it's in place. So the 3-year plan is used as the basis, the guide for what should be done during a year. So the SMEs go and find the applicable checklist. They do that by going to our Cnap IG SharePoint site. Once they get there, they go to the MIC page. And then on the MIC page, from the middle on down, you'll see the links to all the things that really apply to you and that you use most often. One of those is inspection checklist blank. Once you click that, it's a central repository for all the checklists from NavInsGen, and you find the one that applies to what it is that you're trying to review. So what's the importance of the checklist? Well, each year, MIC coordinators are required to submit a statement of assurance. So this document is essentially asserts that a command has a system of controls in place. They have a tone from the top. There's command buy-in. And they have a list of AU, sub-AU, so everybody knows what your processes are. And they have policies and procedures, etc. And the big thing is that there's reasonable assurance that the controls are in place and they're working as intended. So the importance of the checklist is that there's only one way to know the controls are in place and working as intended, and that's to test them and to document them. And without testing and documenting, you simply can't know whether or not they're in place, and you certainly can't know whether or not they're working as intended. So someone's belief that a control is in place is not adequate, and neither is a simple yes, no, or NA answer on those checklists without any explanations. So that's the key, and these checklists are key to the success of the whole program, really. So when you click on one of the checklist, it brings up something here. So the standard checklist, and the question is here, the yes, no, NA, or comment. So if you choose a yes answer, no answer, or an NA answer, there has to be some comment here that talks about that speaks to that answer. So for example, this is a checklist that looks slightly different than the one that you see, because this is one that that I use when doing my own reviews, and it looks slightly different because I like to see what the error rate is, and I put an acceptable error rate in there for me, and I do things like see which one of the questions is a critical element. Um, those things are not necessary. I do them for my own benefit. Uh, the rest of it is essentially the same. You have a question, you have yes, no, and NA, and then you have supporting documentation. So from an SME, for the SME, the person that's doing the checklist, your job is to support this answer. So, for example, in this question, has the MIC coordinator been designated in writing by your organization's leadership? If I put yes, then I say why it is yes. Per review of an appointment letter signed on 18 April 2016, noted that the MIC coordinator has been appointed in writing. That type of statement is what we're looking for to determine whether or not the control has been tested, and whether or not someone other than the person that's doing this can follow that logic and get back to and essentially come up with the same answer. So as the MIC coordinator, when you're doing your reviews during the year, what you're looking for when they submit a checklist to you is that they're making statements such as this, that you can follow the logic even if you're not an SME in that area. And what I will be looking for is that when you, as a MIC coordinator, have said that you've reviewed this and that the controls are in place, I'll be asking for a sample of some checklists to do the same thing, to do the same type of review. So that's what we're looking for on the checklist. That's what we're looking for as the coordinator. Also, as the coordinator, you'll have to do a quarterly spot check memorandum. And so this is different than what was submitted previously. Previously, I was getting a lot of one-line emails that basically said controls were in place. There was no support for what was tested. There was no support as to why they came to conclusions. So I've changed it, and it's essentially saying the same thing as the emails, only it's more descriptive in what on what was done. So you'll have the sub-AU's name. So say, for example, there were, and this is mostly for the larger units. Say, for example, that you conducted quarterly spot checks and you had sub-assessable units. Maybe there were 10 that were due during that point, and you looked at 3 of them during this particular quarter. You put the sub-AU's name, the sub-AU's ID from the 3-year plan, the date that you conducted it, the quarter that it covered, and then whether or not the control was in place, and whether or not there's any corrective action needed, and if so, what that date is. If there's correction action needed, it has to be 60 days or less from the time of the spot check. And the type of remarks we're looking for in the quarterly spot check: per review of checklist ABC provided by whoever the AU SME is, determine when controls tested during the quarter, that sufficient evidence was provided to support that the required testing method was done. That is for a review where there are no issues. If there did have one, such as this, he said, per review of checklist DEF stated provided by AU SME Mr. Smith, there is no evidence of control testing or the use of approved testing method provided during the spot check, and a subsequent review will be required no later than August 8th. And you'll say that the result of that will be in your subsequent memo. And then finally, per review of external report GHI 123 dated 6/8 provided by the AU, determined that an external review of this AU was conducted and that there were no material findings that required corrective action. So to to allow someone to use external work so that they don't have to redo work or reinvent the wheel. If there is an inspection on the government travel card program during this period, and it covers the same area that they would be reviewing, they can simply use that report as evidence that the control is working as intended. No other work needed at that point. And then there's a statement down below where the MIC coordinator certifies that the spot check, that during your spot check, the sub-A used one of these methods, meaning that they stated that they observed something, that they inspected something, that they talked to someone, or they did a reperformance of something to come up with the same answer as that they reviewed. And then whether or not there's issues, no issues, or if there are issues, what the issues were, which sub-A you would apply to, and then corrective actions needed. And then they simply double click here, and then that's a digital signature. And they will be, then you'll submit this as your quarterly review. That is it for the checklist and for the quarterly reviews. And as far as the visits and the reviews go, from my perspective, I've already kind of mentioned what it is that I will be looking for when I look at the MIC coordinator's work. I will, if I come in the second quarter and you've only got through half of your sub-AU testing, I will only look at that, which you've done up to that point, to make sure that the logic is sound, and make sure that I come to the same conclusions as you do. We can reconcile the differences between kind of thought patterns. But if there's any questions or comments on anything about the checklist or about conducting the quarterly reviews, feel free to give me a call. Let me know.